My boyfriend looked me straight in the eye, shrugged lightly, and said, "If you can't handle my friend's sharp humor, just pay your share and go." I remember blinking at him, thinking I'd misheard. The restaurant noise faded, the clink of silverware and low conversations around us blurring into a dull hum. His three friends stared at me with that smug, entertained curiosity they always had when I finally pushed back. I felt my cheeks burn, not from embarrassment, but from a slow, cold clarity. "Thanks for the choice," I said. Then I calmly set my fork down, reached for my wallet, and stood up. They thought I was bluffing. Of course they did. To them, I was the sensitive blue-collar girlfriend, the plumber who messes with pipes and tinkers with junk cars, while their golden boy climbed the corporate ladder. The one they could poke at, belittle, laugh off, because surely I wouldn't actually leave. I did. I counted my share of the meal, entree, drink, my portion of the tip, placed the cash neatly on the table, and picked up my keys. "This covers my dinner," I said, voice steady. "Enjoy your celebration." My boyfriend rolled his eyes. "Nora, don't make a scene." But I wasn't raising my voice. I wasn't crying. I wasn't begging him to defend me. I was simply done. As I walked away, I heard one of his friends snicker, "She'll be back in 10 minutes, bet." I didn't look back. I walked out of the expensive downtown grill I had suggested, the one I'd offered to pay for in full to celebrate his promotion. I stepped into the cool night air, crossed the street, and slid into my truck. I sat there for a moment, hands resting on the steering wheel, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then I started the engine and drove off. My name is Nora. I'm 29, and I had just walked out of what was supposed to be a celebratory dinner for my boyfriend of 3 years, Ethan, after he handed me the cleanest exit I'd ever been given. At that table, he chose their sharp humor over my dignity. In the car, I chose myself. I just didn't know yet that this one choice would unravel everything that came after. Before last night, I used to think Ethan and I were solid. Not perfect, no relationship is, but steady enough that I could picture a future with him without flinching. I'm 29, a plumber by trade, and proud of it. My job isn't glamorous, but it's honest work. It's problem solving. It's skill. It's fixing what people rely on. And yes, sometimes it means grease on my jeans or coming home with aching hands, but I've never been ashamed of the life I've built. Ethan, on the other hand, has always lived in a different world, a cleaner, curated one. He's a marketing specialist climbing the corporate ladder with the confidence of someone who's never had their worth questioned. We met at a friend's apartment warming party 3 years ago. He was charming, articulate, the kind of man who could make anyone feel seen when he spoke to them. When he asked for my number, I remember thinking, someone like him wants someone like me? We moved in together after 18 months. At first, it felt like balance, my grounded practicality with his polished ambition. He'd talk about office politics and campaign launches. I'd tell him about a tricky pipe replacement or a classic car I was restoring. He said he loved how different we were, said I made him feel real. The problem wasn't him, not at first. The problem was his friends. His trio from college, Claire, Sophie, and Rachel, were inseparable, loud, and razor-edged, the kind of women who seemed to take pride in being brutally honest, though the brutality was always aimed at other people. The first time I met them, Claire smiled at me and said, "Oh, you're the plumber girlfriend," as if Ethan had brought home a novelty item. Sophie joked that I must be great at fixing leaks and mood swings. Rachel's specialty was the backhanded compliment. "You're so brave wearing work boots on a date night." Ethan would laugh along, later insisting, "They're just like that. Don't take it personally." And I tried. I truly did. But the jokes kept coming and getting sharper. They mocked my job, my clothes, the way I talked about cars. They treated Ethan like a prize they were all collectively raising, and me like the placeholder woman until someone more suitable came along. Still, Ethan and I made it work. He could be thoughtful, making coffee for me when I woke up early for jobs, holding me at night after long days, brushing dirt from my cheek with a smile. Those were the moments that made me stay. But little cracks formed over time. Like when Claire suggested Ethan should date someone more in his world, and he didn't shut it down immediately. Or when Sophie joked that I was his charity project, and Ethan only said, "Oh my God, stop," without actually defending me. Or when Rachel mentioned an ambitious coworker who matched Ethan's drive, and he quietly changed the subject instead of correcting her. I told myself he wasn't the problem, that his friends were just too much, that once we were older, things would settle, that he'd eventually stand up for me in a way that actually mattered. But the truth was always there, subtle but present. He liked me, but he liked their approval more. And every time they mocked me while he stayed silent, something inside me tightened just a little more. I just didn't realize how close that string was to snapping. Not until the night he told me to pay my share and go. Not until I actually stood up and left. Looking back now, it's obvious the breaking point didn't begin in that restaurant. It started months earlier. In small, quiet moments, I brushed aside because I didn't want to believe what they meant. The first sign was how Ethan started changing around his friends. With me, he was relaxed, playful, affectionate. But the moment Claire, Sophie, or Rachel entered the room, it was like a switch flipped. His posture straightened, his voice shifted, and he slipped into this hyper-polished version of himself that didn't quite match the man I lived with. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then the jokes began sharpening, slowly crossing lines they once tiptoed around. One night, after a double date that left my stomach tight with tension, I said quietly in the car, "It hurts when they talk to me like that." Ethan sighed, tapping the steering wheel. "Nora, it's just humor. They tease everyone." "They don't tease you," I said softly. He hesitated, a small, telling pause, then shrugged. "They know me better." That sentence shouldn't have cut so deep, but it did, because it hinted at something he never said outright. "You're not really part of this circle. You're adjacent." The next seed was planted during his birthday dinner. His friends gave him an expensive leather briefcase for the future CEO. When I handed him the vintage watch I'd saved up for, one he'd wanted for years, Claire said, "Aw, handmade sentiment from the blue-collar girlfriend. Cute." Everyone laughed except me. Later that night, I asked him, "Do you really not hear how they talk to me?" He kissed my forehead and murmured, "You're overthinking again." I forced a smile, swallowed the hurt, and told myself I was being too sensitive. That women like Claire and Sophie just had sharp personalities, that someday they'd warm up to me. The third seed was Ethan's increasing silence whenever they insulted me. At first he'd try to lighten the mood. Then he'd simply sit still, letting the comments fall where they may. One afternoon, his friends came over to celebrate Ethan's small promotion. I brought snacks into the living room, placed them on the table, and overheard Sophie whisper, "Honestly, Ethan deserves someone with more ambition." I froze. Ethan laughed under his breath. Not loudly, but enough. Enough to tell me he wasn't uncomfortable. Enough to tell me he wouldn't stop them. Enough to tell me he wouldn't defend me. That night, when we were brushing our teeth, I said quietly, "It bothers me when they say things like that." He spit, rinsed, and said casually, "They don't mean it. You're taking everything too literally." I stared at my own reflection beside his, and wondered if I was slowly fading into a version of myself that needed his approval more than my own peace. The truth is, I wasn't angry at his friends. Not really. They were bullies hiding behind sarcasm, and bullies only have power when someone enables them. I was angry that Ethan, the man who held me at night, who said he loved my strength, my work ethic, my independence, became a smaller version of himself whenever they were around. A man who laughed at me to fit in. A man who apologized privately but never publicly. A man who thought his friend's comfort was more important than my dignity. But I stayed, because love does that. Because I believed he would grow. Because I thought I mattered enough for him to defend. I didn't see then that the seeds of conflict weren't just being planted, they were already growing roots. And eventually, they'd break through the surface in one brutal, unforgettable night. The night of Ethan's promotion dinner was supposed to be special. I had planned it that way. I suggested the upscale downtown grill, told him I wanted to treat everyone to celebrate his hard work. 3 years together meant celebrating each other's wins, and despite everything, I truly was proud of him. I spent extra time getting ready, choosing a black dress that made me feel confident. When Ethan saw me, he smiled and kissed my cheek. "You look amazing," he said. Moments like that made me remember why I stayed. But the moment we reached the table, everything shifted. Claire leaned back in her chair, eyes sweeping over me like she was appraising a used item. "Nora," she said with an overly sweet smile, "still fixing pipes for a living? Must be nice having such a simple job." I forced a polite smile. "Plumbing requires a lot more problem-solving than people think." Sophie snorted. "Come on, Nora, you don't need a degree for that." Rachel chimed in, swirling her wine. "But hey, you restore those old junk cars, right? How many thousands have you blown on scrap metal?" Ethan chuckled under his breath, just enough to tell them he wasn't uncomfortable. just enough to tell me I was alone at this table. Throughout dinner, the jabs kept coming. Claire called my Mustang project a money pit. Sophie said Ethan needed someone who understood corporate life. Rachel suggested Ethan should reconnect with a guy from a summit. He was ambitious, not mechanical. I looked at Ethan each time, waiting for him to step in. He didn't. He just gave me that small, tight smile, as if to say, ignore them. Don't make this a thing. But it was a thing. It had always been a thing. Halfway through the meal, I finally leaned toward him and whispered, Ethan, can you please tell them to stop? This isn't funny anymore. He sighed loudly, making sure everyone heard. Nora, they're just messing around. Claire perked up. Is Nora upset? Did we hurt your feelings? Sophie laughed. God, she's so fragile. Something cold twisted in my stomach. I'm not fragile, I said calmly. I'm just not enjoying being insulted during your celebration. Rachel rolled her eyes. It's just jokes. Relax. Ethan put down his fork, rubbed his temples dramatically, and said, Nora, if you can't handle my friend's sharp humor, just pay your share and go. The table went silent. Even the restaurant seemed to hush. My heart froze mid-beat. Claire was the first to react, a short, disbelieving giggle. She actually said that. I stared at Ethan, at the man I had loved, lived with, believed in. He didn't look angry. He didn't look conflicted. He looked annoyed, like I was the one embarrassing him. Is that what you want? I asked quietly. He shrugged. If you're going to make a big deal out of nothing, yeah, pay your share and go. That was the moment the final crack split open. Sudden, bright, undeniable. I set my utensils down. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't waver. Thanks for the choice, I said. I stood up, my chair sliding back softly. I took out my wallet, counted my meal plus tip, placed what I owed neatly on the table. This covers mine. Ethan's eyes widened slightly, like he hadn't expected me to call his bluff. Nora, sit down. Don't make a scene. But I wasn't making a scene. I was preserving what little dignity I had left. I grabbed my keys. Enjoy your celebration. As I walked away, Sophie called after me. She'll be back in 10 minutes. I didn't turn around. I walked out of the restaurant, the cool night air hitting my skin like a shock. My breath trembled, not from fear, but from a strange clarity washing over me. I got into my truck, sat for a moment as my heart caught up to my decision, then turned the key and drove off. Somewhere between the restaurant and the first stoplight, I realized. He had handed me the cleanest exit imaginable, and for the first time in 3 years, I took it. When I drove away from that restaurant, my hands were shaking so hard I had to grip the steering wheel just to steady my breath. The city lights blurred past my windshield, reflecting in my eyes like fragments of the life I thought I had with Ethan. A life now cracked clean down the middle. For the first 10 minutes, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt numb. It was like my body shut down every emotion to give my mind space to process the truth. He didn't stand up for me. He never had. And tonight, he finally said it out loud. When I reached our apartment, the silence nearly swallowed me. I walked inside, expecting some wave of sorrow to hit, but instead I felt strangely calm, focused. Something sharp and cold had replaced the softness I used to carry for him. My phone buzzed. Ethan, nice stunt. Come back and pay the bill. Another buzz. Ethan, this isn't funny. A third. Ethan, Nora, are you seriously doing this? I put the phone face down. I wasn't doing anything. I was finally not doing something, not tolerating disrespect, not excusing cruelty, not shrinking myself to keep the peace. 30 minutes later, there was a pounding at the door. Nora, open up! Ethan. I didn't move, didn't even breathe loudly. Nora, this is ridiculous. You embarrassed me in front of my friends. Just open the door so we can talk like adults. Talk like adults. Funny how people use that phrase only when they want to avoid consequences. He kept knocking, then calling, then knocking again. Finally, I answered through the door, voice steady. We can talk tomorrow, not tonight. What? No, open the door. No. Why are you being dramatic? That word, that cursed word. I'm not being dramatic, I said softly. I'm setting a boundary. There was silence, then a bitter laugh from him. Oh, please. You stormed out because you can't handle a few jokes. Insults, I corrected, for years, and you encouraged them. I didn't. You told me to pay my share and go. Another pause, a heavy one. That wasn't literal, he finally said. You were overreacting. Overreacting. He had no idea what a gift he was giving me. I exhaled slowly. Ethan, I left because you made it clear you'd rather lose me than risk offending them. That's not fair. It's true. He went quiet again. When he spoke, his voice softened. Practiced, familiar, the one he used when he wanted things to go back to normal without addressing the problem. Babe, just let me in. We'll talk. I'm sorry they went too far, but you didn't have to walk out. I closed my eyes. Ethan, I whispered, I walked out because I'm tired. I'm tired of feeling small to make you feel comfortable. What does that even mean? It means I'm done being your friend's punching bag, and your silence tonight told me exactly where I stand. He sighed sharply, frustration bleeding through the wood between us. You're blowing this out of proportion. There it was, that one sentence that made everything crystal clear. I'm staying at Liam's tonight, I said quietly. I'll grab some clothes and leave. Are you kidding me? Nora, don't do this. Don't be stupid. My hand froze on the doorknob. He must have heard the shift in my breathing because he quickly backpedaled. I didn't mean that. I'm upset. I know, I said, but that's not my responsibility anymore. And with that, I walked to the bedroom, packed a duffel bag, and left without opening the door. When I stepped into the night air again, something inside me broke, cleanly, silently, like the snap of a string pulled too tight for too long. I sat in my truck and finally let myself feel the weight of everything. The hurt, the betrayal, the exhaustion, the realization that I had been defending a man who never once defended me. My phone buzzed again. Ethan, Nora, please, don't leave like this. Ethan, come home. We can work it out. Ethan, you're being crazy. That last one made my chest go strangely still. No, not crazy, not dramatic, not fragile. Just done. I put my truck in gear and drove toward Liam's place, toward safety, clarity, and the first breath of air that didn't feel borrowed. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew one thing for certain. Tonight, I had chosen myself, and I wasn't going back. I spent the night at Liam's sofa, not sleeping, just existing. The dim glow of the lamp, the scent of black coffee lingering from his late-night cup, the unfamiliar quiet, it all felt unreal. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, vibrating across the coffee table like a restless insect. By sunrise, there were over 30 messages from Ethan, some angry, some pleading, some passive-aggressive, a few outright insulting. It was like watching someone cycle through every emotional manipulation tactic, hoping at least one would pull me back. When Liam walked into the living room holding 2 mugs, he gave me a slow once-over. Long night? I exhaled. Understatement. He handed me a mug. Drink, then tell me. So I did. I told him about the dinner, the insults, the moment Ethan told me to pay my share and go. Liam listened silently, jaw clenched tighter with every detail. Remember when they mocked your dad's accent at your birthday? He said. Or when they called your cousin's wedding quaint because it wasn't at a vineyard? Yes. And when they made fun of your work boots at Ethan's graduation party? I sighed. Yes, Liam. He nodded. Good. Because I need you to remember every single one of those things the next time you think you're being too harsh. I didn't argue, because deep down I knew he was right. At 10 a.m., Ethan called again, from an unknown number. Liam raised an eyebrow. Answer if you want, if not, don't. I picked up. Nora, Ethan said, breathless, we need to talk. Okay, I said calmly, talk. In person, come home. No, he scoffed. You're being absurd. Your feelings got hurt. Mine get hurt all the time. You don't see me running off. I nearly laughed at that. I left because you told me to, I said. Your exact words were, pay your share and go. So I did. A long pause. Not literally, he muttered. Nobody actually leaves. I did. He exhaled sharply. You embarrassed me. You left me with a $400 bill. No, I corrected. I left you with your bill. I paid for my meal. Exactly what you told me to do. His tone hardened. You're unbelievable. That's funny, I said, because I feel the same way. I hung up. He immediately tried calling again. I blocked the number. Moments later, another text came in, from a different number. Unknown. Hey, this is Jamal, Rachel's boyfriend. Just wanted to say, props. You did the right thing. I blinked. Nora, how do you know what happened? Jamal. Rachel showed me the texts. They're at Emma's place now, planning payback. Just wanted to give you a heads up. So the squad wasn't done. Of course they weren't. They were the type who played victim and villain interchangeably, depending on which suited them that hour. Liam peered over my shoulder at the message. Oh good, he muttered. The coven is mobilizing. I cracked the first real smile in 24 hours. 2 days later, I went back to the apartment to grab more things while Ethan was at work. The hallway felt different, tense, like the building itself could sense the storm brewing. When I approached our door, I noticed a piece of paper taped to it. A formal notice. Noise complaint filed on Monday night. Of course, their little payback session must have gotten loud enough for neighbors to complain. I stepped inside and froze. The apartment was a disaster. Empty wine bottles on the counter, fast food bags spilling onto the table, my tools missing from their usual shelf. My stomach twisted. I searched the bedroom. Nothing. The hall closet, nothing. The tiny garage, shelves disturbingly empty. A sinking dread washed through me. Then I found it. My missing toolbox shoved behind Ethan's suits. My special tools, the expensive Milwaukee pipe threader, the flute clamp meter, gone. Sold. Cheaply. To strangers. A mutual friend had already sent me the listings. All of it matched. And the final blow? A Craigslist post. 1969 Mustang Project. Fixer-upper. $2,000 OBO. Must sell fast. My car, the car I'd been restoring for years, worth triple that amount as is. My hands trembled as I dialed the police non-emergency line. The officer listened patiently. Selling someone else's property, he said, even if you live together, is theft. Document everything and file a report. So I did. Every missing tool, every screenshot, the listing for my Mustang, the messages from friends confirming the sale. Then my landlord, Mr. Lee, texted, "We need to talk about the lease. Ethan says you abandoned the apartment. Noise complaint. Call me." I immediately did. "Mr. Lee, I haven't abandoned anything," I said. "I've been gone 3 days. For personal reasons." He sighed. "I'd rather keep you as a tenant. You pay on time. If you want the lease solo, I'm open to it." "What about Ethan?" "He'd need to agree to be removed, or you both break the lease. But the noise complaint complicates things." I was exhausted. By the time I loaded my remaining belongings into my truck, Ethan arrived. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "Moving my stuff somewhere safe," I said, "since you're selling it." He crossed his arms. "I needed money for the dinner you ditched." I stared at him. "So you stole from me?" "It's not stealing," he snapped. "We live together. What's yours is mine." "No," I said. "That's not how the law works." Claire pulled up right then, climbing out of her car like backup reinforcement. "Oh, the loser's here," she sneered. "You owe Emma $400. "No," I said calmly. "I don't." "Yes, you do. You invited us out." "And paid my share when I left," I cut in. "As instructed." Claire scoffed. "Blue-collar types always have brittle egos." I laughed, genuinely. My ego's fine. My boundaries finally just clicked. I loaded the last box, shut the truck door, and turned to Ethan. "I'm done." "You're throwing away 3 years," he said, voice cracking. "No," I answered. "You did." I drove off with their stares burning into my back. But for the first time in years, I felt lighter. Not healed, not whole, but free. I didn't cry when I drove away. Not when Ethan yelled after me. Not even when Claire spat insults like she was trying to wound me one last time on my way out. But that night, alone in Liam's guest room, the silence became unbearable. The room felt too neat, too unfamiliar. The faint smell of detergent on the sheets, the low hum of the mini fan in the corner, the way the moonlight sliced across the floor. Everything reminded me I was somewhere temporary, somewhere I hadn't chosen, somewhere I ended up because the person I believed I'd build a life with had shattered something fundamental inside me. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, willing my mind to stop replaying everything. But heartbreak never listens. It started with the small things. Ethan's laugh at Claire's jokes. The eye rolls he gave when I defended myself. The way he tightened his jaw when I didn't react correctly to his friend's insults. Then the big things hit like a punch. The $400 bill he insisted I owed. The texts mocking me. The tools he sold. The Mustang listing. That one hurt more than the rest. Restoring that car wasn't a hobby. It was my sanctuary. My father and I had worked on cars together when I was younger. When he passed, restoring classics became my way of keeping a piece of him alive. Ethan knew that. He knew exactly what that Mustang meant to me. And he still tried to sell it. That realization was the first crack that let the tears come through. I curled into myself, pulling the blanket tight, trying to contain the sob that tore out of my chest. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't quiet. It was the kind of grief that shakes your whole body, where you choke on your own breath and your vision blurs until you can't see anything but the pain. Liam must have heard because there was a soft knock at the door. "Nora, you okay?" I wiped my eyes, swallowed hard. "Yeah," I managed. "I'm fine." He didn't believe me. "Can I come in?" "No," I said quickly. The last thing I wanted was pity, even from someone kind. He hesitated. "All right, I'm downstairs if you need anything." When the door clicked shut, the room felt even heavier. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. How did I end up here? How did I spend years with someone who cared so little about my dignity? How did I ignore every warning sign? The thoughts spiraled, tightening around my chest. Maybe I should have left earlier. Maybe I should have demanded better. Maybe I wasn't enough. That last thought gutted me. I sat up abruptly, gripping the edge of the bed, trying to chase it away, but the insecurity clung to my ribs like something alive. Why wasn't I enough? Was it because I wasn't corporate? Was it because I worked with my hands instead of a laptop? Was it because I didn't fit into his polished friend group? The poisonous questions kept multiplying, feeding on every doubt I'd ever had. Then another thought surfaced, a colder one. He didn't treat me poorly because I wasn't enough. He treated me poorly because he didn't respect me. Respect is not something you earn by changing yourself. It's something the other person either gives or doesn't. And Ethan never did. My breath softened, my shoulders lowering slightly. I lay back down, staring again at the ceiling, tears drying slowly on my cheeks. A deep, lonely ache replaced the sharp sting from earlier. For the first time since leaving him, the reality fully settled. 3 years. 3 years I gave him loyalty, love, patience, empathy. 3 years I defended him, believed in him, protected him from criticism, even when he wouldn't protect me from his friends. 3 years. And he couldn't give me one moment of basic human decency. The weight of that truth pressed down on me until my eyelids felt too heavy to hold open. I drifted into a restless half-sleep, filled with snippets of memories and questions with no answers. When I woke hours later, the ache was still there, but something subtle had shifted. The pain was still raw, still open, but it no longer consumed every breath. It had shape now, form, meaning. Reaching rock bottom isn't destruction. It's clarity. And in that dark moment, as the morning sun began to seep through the window, I realized something that would change everything that came next. I wasn't broken. I wasn't worthless. I wasn't small. I had simply outgrown a man who stayed the same size. 2 days after the breakdown in Liam's guest room, clarity began to replace the chaos. Not all at once, not dramatically, but quietly, like fog lifting inch by inch. I had filed the police report, spoken with the landlord, and documented every violation Ethan created. For the first time, I wasn't reacting emotionally. I was acting deliberately. Taking my life back wasn't loud. It was methodical. That morning, while Liam brewed coffee, I sat at the kitchen table scrolling through screenshots of the tool listings. Evidence. Proof. Pieces of truth that would no longer be bent to fit Ethan's narrative. "You look different," Liam said as he set a mug down in front of me. "Different how?" "Like you remembered who you are." I smiled faintly. Maybe I did. Later that afternoon, I met with Mr. Lee, our landlord. He was sitting in his office, a small fan humming beside him. He looked up as I entered. "Nora," he said kindly, "I'm glad you came. I want this resolved fairly." "I appreciate that," I said. He clasped his hands. "I've reviewed the noise complaints, the report you filed, and the messages you showed me. I can't legally take sides in your breakup, but I can act on lease violations." My stomach fluttered with nervous hope. He continued, "If Ethan doesn't agree to be removed from the lease, I can file eviction due to multiple disturbances. You, on the other hand, have no violations." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "Thank you." He nodded. "You've been a good tenant for years. I'd rather you stay than deal with more chaos." For the first time since the dinner disaster, I felt something powerful. Control. I left the office lighter. Outside, as I walked back to my truck, my phone buzzed. A message from Jamal. "Jamal. Got news. Rachel's been mocking me behind my back for months. Told her friends I'm temporary. I'm done. Me. I'm sorry. You deserve better." Jamal. "We both do. The whole group is collapsing. Sophie's boyfriend is pissed about how she treated you. Claire got fired. It's karma week out here." I stopped walking. Everything he said matched exactly what I had known deep down but never said out loud. These women weren't confident. They weren't powerful. They weren't superior. They were unstable, insecure bullies and holding each other up like a shaky house of cards. And the moment one card fell, the whole structure trembled. Me. "Thank you for telling me, really." Jamal. "You sparked something, Nora. Everyone's finally seeing who they really are." I put my phone away slowly, letting his words settle. I hadn't exposed them. I hadn't retaliated. I hadn't humiliated anyone. All I did was walk away. And walking away made the truth echo louder than any argument ever could. That evening, I drove to the apartment one last time to retrieve the rest of my belongings. I chose a time I knew Ethan would still be at work. The building felt different now. Not a place tied to memories, but a place tied to lessons. While sorting the last box, I found a photograph tucked in a drawer. Ethan and me at a county fair, smiling like people who believed in each other. I stared at it for a long moment. I didn't feel pain or grief, just a strange softness, a reminder of a woman who gave love wholeheartedly. She wasn't stupid, she wasn't weak. She just didn't know yet what she deserved. I placed the photo face down in the drawer. Some memories are better left uncarried. As I loaded the box into my truck, the hallway echoed with footsteps. For a moment, my breath caught. But it wasn't Ethan. It was Mr. Lee doing rounds. He nodded respectfully. "Everything all right?" "Yes," I said. "Better than all right?" He smiled. "Good. Remember, you have options if he causes trouble." "I know," I said. "Thank you." When he disappeared down the hall, I closed the tailgate and looked up at the fading sky. Something shifted inside me. Something strong, quiet, undeniable. This wasn't just an ending. It was the moment I realized I wasn't defined by Ethan's choices, or his friend's cruelty, or the mess they made trying to retaliate. I was defined by my response. And my response was simple. I walked away, and everything that wasn't meant for me fell apart behind me. As I drove back to Liam's, wind tangling through the open window, I whispered to myself, "You didn't lose anything. You gained your freedom." And it was true. For the first time in years, I felt steady, clear-headed, grounded in my own worth. The turning point wasn't a dramatic confrontation. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't proving anyone wrong. It was choosing myself and finally understanding what that choice meant. Fallout doesn't arrive like an explosion. It arrives like a slow chain reaction, one domino tipping into the next, each one falling exactly where it was always meant to land. And the first domino was the police report. 2 days after I filed it, an officer called to confirm that the listings matched my serial-numbered tools. "This is clear-cut theft," he said. "We'll be contacting Ethan soon." I thanked him and hung up. I expected to feel vindicated. Instead, I felt nothing, just calm certainty. Justice, when it's real, is quiet. Meanwhile, Ethan's group chat, the trio of mean girls he trusted more than his own partner, was crumbling faster than either of us expected. It started with Jamal dumping Rachel. He texted me, "Jamal, I moved out. She was mocking me to her friends the same way they mocked you. Toxic is toxic." Then Sophie's boyfriend stepped away too. "Jamal, he saw the text demanding you pay $400. Said she's spoiled and entitled. They're on a break." Claire, the queen of instigation, lost her job. Not because of me, not because of Ethan, but because she did what she always does. Trash people online during work hours. Her company's HR finally had enough. As Jamal put it, it's like all the masks slipped at once. Claire was furious, Rachel was spiraling, and Sophie was suddenly pretending she had nothing to do with any of it. Ethan, of course, was right in the center of this implosion. Not because he caused it directly, but because he'd enabled the rot for years. And without someone to quietly absorb their cruelty, everything turned inward. Bullies need targets. When the target leaves, they turn on each other. Then came the lease problem. Mr. Lee served Ethan a cure or quit notice, 3 days to resolve multiple violations or face eviction. Suddenly, the man who had claimed Nora abandoned the apartment was texting me like a cornered animal. "Ethan, please come talk. We need to fix this." "Ethan, I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean for things to get so out of control." "Ethan, can we just reset? Start over?" "Ethan, please don't let them evict me." It was almost surreal. For 3 years, he dismissed my boundaries. For 3 years, he excused every insult his friends threw at me. For 3 years, he minimized every time I told him I didn't feel respected. Now he was begging me to shield him from consequences. I didn't reply. You don't rescue people who set fire to the bridge and then cry about the smoke. Eventually, Mr. Lee texted again. "Mr. Lee, Ethan is now willing to be removed from the lease. Let's proceed." And that was that. The apartment, the one I once imagined we might build a life in, became mine alone. Not because I fought for it, but because Ethan lost the ability to stay. The next wave of fallout hit harder for him. His reputation. One of his coworkers, a woman he admired, sent me a message on Instagram. "I heard what happened. I'm sorry you went through that. You made the strong choice." Apparently, word had spread quietly in their professional circle. Ethan wasn't fired, but he wasn't trusted either. People knew he sold my property. People knew he lied. People knew his friends were the type who mocked others while climbing corporate ladders. Ethan loved his image. He lived for approval. And now, piece by piece, that image was disintegrating. The final collapse came in the form of a text message from him one evening. A long one, rambling, desperate. Ethan, I know I messed up. I know I should have defended you. I know I let them treat you horribly. I know I crossed the line when I sold your stuff. I'm so humiliated now. Everything is falling apart. I didn't think you would actually leave. Please, Nora, I love you. Can we try again? I stared at the screen for a long time. There was a time when those words would have shattered me, a time when I would have replayed them until I convinced myself he deserved another chance. But not now. Now I could see the truth behind every sentence. He wasn't apologizing because he understood. He was apologizing because he was suffering. And suffering isn't the same as remorse. I powered off my phone. Not out of anger, out of closure. Because sometimes the cleanest ending is the one without an explanation. A week later, Liam helped me move the last of my boxes into my new place. A small but cozy one-bedroom with sun-warmed floors and a quiet backyard. While carrying the final box, he grinned. You know, he said, you didn't dodge a bullet. You escaped an entire firing squad. I laughed, a real laugh, free and unweighted. And maybe that was the real fallout. Not the collapse of Ethan's circle, not the lease or the police report or the group imploding, but the realization that I had finally stepped out of a life where I was constantly defending myself, and into one where I didn't have to. Healing didn't arrive as some triumphant moment. It arrived slowly, like sunlight creeping across a room you thought would always stay dark. In my new apartment, smaller, quieter, softer, I learned how to breathe again. Not the shallow, braced-for-impact breaths I used to take around Ethan's friends, but real ones, deep ones, the kind that fill your lungs without asking permission. I rearranged furniture, hung shelves, placed my last surviving tools in a neat row, and for the first time in years, the space around me didn't feel like something I had to earn. It simply felt like mine. Every now and then, I'd stumble across something from the old life, a photo tucked into a book, a sweater he once complimented, a mug we bought together, but none of it hurt the way it used to. The memories didn't sting, they just existed, like echoes fading in the distance. One afternoon, while polishing a part from the Mustang restoration I'd rescued in time, I realized something. Ethan didn't break me, he revealed me. He revealed the version of myself I had neglected, the woman who tolerated too much, explained too much, forgave too much. The woman who believed silence was the same as peace. The woman who thought love meant holding everything together alone. I don't blame her. She loved with a full heart. She just didn't know yet that love without respect is a slow form of suffocation. In the weeks that followed, I heard from people who knew the story. Neighbors, co-workers, acquaintances. Some apologized for not speaking up sooner. Some said I handled everything with so much grace. But grace wasn't what saved me. Clarity did. Clarity that his friend's cruelty was never about me. Clarity that Ethan's silence spoke louder than any apology ever could. Clarity that walking away was not dramatic or impulsive. It was necessary. And the most powerful clarity of all, my value was never determined by people who refused to see it. If you're listening to this and you've been where I was, sitting at a table where you're the punchline, waiting for someone to defend you, shrinking yourself to fit into rooms that were never meant for you, hear me. You don't have to stay. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to accept disrespect because you're afraid of being alone. Being alone is not the worst thing. Being unloved while standing right next to someone is. The night Ethan told me to pay my share and go, I thought I was leaving a relationship. But really, I was reclaiming myself. And that, more than anything he lost, more than anything I walked away from, is the lesson I carry forward. Healing isn't revenge. Healing is freedom. Healing is choosing yourself even when someone else refuses to. And I choose myself now, fully, fearlessly, finally.